We were halfway through Missouri when the rain picked up. Kim was driving like usual. It was 3 of us in a 12-passenger van that had been gutted and rearranged to include a caged-off area in the back where musical instruments could be safely stored. If you smashed one of the van's windows, the keyboards, amps, and drums were still out of reach, locked behind a large plywood box bolted to the floor. "It's kind of hard to see," said Kim, leaning forward so her chin nearly touched the top of the steering wheel. The windshield wipers did their best, but the road was distorted through the wet glass. My younger brother, Matt, sat in the passenger seat, assisting Kim by quietly staring forward. "Look at all the cars," I said, as we headed under an overpass. Trucks and automobiles were parked in a neat row along the shoulder as a highway passed above us. The rain stopped pummeling our windshield as we passed under this road. For a moment, the world around us was silent, and then we popped out the other side and the rain began again. "It's not that bad," said Kim, mocking the parked cars for their prudence. She leaned forward a little more. We trudged along for another 30 minutes, driving under a few more overpasses that again housed parked cars. Eventually, the rain began to slow down. "Fireworks at the next exit," said Kim, pointing at a billboard. You want to stop and get some?" "That'd be great," I said. "I've had to piss for an hour." We pulled up to a huge warehouse. It was 20 feet tall and completely constructed out of thin metal roofing. A number of cars sat in the parking lot. Inside, rows of plywood desks held thousands of Roman candles and cherry bombs and elaborate, colorfully decorated assortment packs. We grazed the aisles, but noticed that the rest of the customers were huddled up at the register. I pushed my way into this group and said, "Excuse me, do you guys have a restroom?" The man behind the counter stared up at a TV screen. "Excuse me," I said again. Then I noticed that a woman standing next to me was crying. "Well," said the man behind the counter, "that's over 40 tornadoes that touched down today." I looked up at the television. Swirling wind devastated a small city. "My daughter lives there," said the crying woman. I didn't know if she meant the pulverized city or the particular house we currently saw on the screen. My brother and Kim had joined the group huddled around the television. "Stay inside your houses," announced a news reporter. "Do not travel. We have sightings of new tornadoes popping up every few minutes. We just got news of a touchdown in Cooper County." "How close is that?" Kim asked the woman standing next to her. "It's just east of here," said the woman. "We're on our way west to Lawrence," Kim continued. "Well," said the woman, "I wouldn't go there just now." I returned from the bathroom, and everything on the TV seemed to be getting worse. "What do you think we should do?" asked Matt. "I don't know." "I'm not getting any service," said Kim, holding up her phone. "I wonder if they have a payphone here. I could call the people putting on the show, see what it's like over in Lawrence." The crying woman now sat on a bench. Someone brought her a can of soda. "We've got 2 options," I said. "Either make a run for it now or wait it out here." We took a moment and looked at our surroundings. A tin shack full of explosives. "It's starting to rain again," said Kim, driving 90 miles per hour down Interstate 70. "You should probably slow down," I said. Kim did not heed this advice. We passed cars that were parked in a ditch beside the road. "Why are they doing that?" asked Matt. "That doesn't seem like a safe place to stop. Is there a tornado around us?" We all frantically looked out the windows but didn't see anything. "Turn on the radio," said Kim. "Maybe they're talking about it." Of course, every radio station was tornado announcements. He said Rawls County, Kim shouted. Where's that? The year was 2006, just predating the smartphone. We had a primitive GPS system, but that was little help to us now. Rawls County? I don't know, I said. See if they have the counties in the Trucker's Atlas. Kim pointed at a large book at Matt's feet that had road maps of every state. Rawls, said Matt, running his finger across the map. I leaned over Matt's shoulder and joined him. There, I said. It's behind us. Okay, said Kim. Now they just said Morgan County. Where's that at? We were driving over 100 miles per hour when the hail began to fall. When we pulled into Lawrence, Kansas, the rain had stopped, but the city looked like a ghost town. We tooled around, looking for a place to eat, but everything was closed on account of the storm. The streets were dark, and we questioned if the power had gone out. There, Matt said, pointing at a convenience store with the lights on. We bought beer and peanuts and crackers. I wish I ate breakfast this morning, said Kim, putting a cracker in her mouth. Matt and Kim had a band under their own name, and they were scheduled to play a show at someone's house. We put the house's address in the GPS and followed the directions through the empty streets of Lawrence. The show has to be canceled, said Matt. Kim took a left and said, We'll see when we get there. It was maybe 5 p.m., but the sky was mostly dark. We passed a playground, and I noticed a homeless man sleeping in the dirt below a slide. I can't believe you made it, said Jonathan, the boy who booked the show. He stood in front of his small house on the outskirts of town. Is the show still happening? Asked Matt. The opening band canceled, said Jonathan, but people are still showing up. Kim unlocked the deadbolt from the back of the van and nervously began removing equipment. But is it safe to have the show, though? Matt continued. Jonathan walked over and grabbed a kick drum from Kim. He shrugged and said, I mean, the show's happening in the basement. Inside the house, people were glued to the TV, watching destruction unfold. Wow, that's close to here, someone said. Come out here, shouted a girl from the yard. Everyone come out. We stepped into the driveway and watched two twisters swirling off in the distance. That's going right through Kansas City, someone pointed out. How close is that, I asked. It's like 30 minutes away. Matt and Kim set up their equipment. The basement had 4 cement walls, a cement floor, and a low wooden ceiling with a few exposed pipes popping out here and there. There was a washer-dryer in one corner, and me in another, sitting behind a table with some records and t-shirts on it. There were maybe 10 people in the audience when Matt and Kim began their first song. Everyone knew each other. These boys and girls bobbed their heads to the music, and then they got into it a little more and danced around for a bit. Everyone seemed to forget about the tornado for about 20 minutes, until the lights began to flicker. Well, said Matt, this is gonna be our last song. When the show was being booked, Jonathan promised we could stay at his house. The invitation was still extended to us, along with most of the audience members. It's too dangerous to drive home if you don't live right in town, Jonathan pointed out. After the show, we all sat in the living room drinking beer and watching a movie. Someone prepared a big pot of pasta, and Kim was happy to eat her first meal of the day. There was only one couch in Jonathan's house, so we all slept on the floor, listening to the wind howl against the windows. I was catching a ride from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I had a house full of friends living in Hollywood who I'd been meaning to visit for over a year. I decided to make this a big surprise, not tell them I was coming, just show up at their door. We had all lived together for years in Boston, and it almost seemed inappropriate that I wasn't living with them now. My brother and Kim agreed to take me as far as Austin, Texas, where a music festival was taking place. In Austin, I would meet up with my friend Zane, who was driving a 21-hour straight shot from Texas to LA. I was selling Matt and Kim's merchandise along the way. That was part of the deal. During their performance, they had me behind a table, slinging t-shirts and CDs, which is a pretty easy gig. They gave me a stack of small bills to use as change, but as the tour went on and t-shirt sales were doing pretty well, this small sum of money turned into a few $100s, and these profits remained in the pocket of my jeans. Of course, I started pinching some of the cash for small things. A truck stop hot dog here, a 40-ounce bottle of Budweiser there. Nothing big. Not enough money that they'd ever miss it. I guess you could say that selling t-shirts was already my trade. I'd been living in Brooklyn for the last year, working in retail hell. I made $200 a week selling clothing that I knew nothing about. I don't remember getting my shifts covered before I began this trip. I guess I must have talked to my manager at some point, but losing my job was the least of my worries. Maybe I was hoping to get fired. Of course, when I got back to New York, the retail job was still waiting for me. $200 for another week's work. In Richmond, Virginia, Matt and Kim played at a house named the Bone Zone. It had a BMX track in the backyard and a basement in which they'd been doing shows for a while. We showed up early, before any of the house's residents had returned from work. I drank 40-ounce beers on their colonial front porch while waiting for someone to let us in, and woke up the next morning in a small cushioned chair, my legs dangling over one armrest and my head hanging from the other. Pittsburgh was full of goths. The show was at a huge art gallery, and everyone smoked cigarettes outside and acted moody. We spent about an hour before the show on the wrong side of town, not realizing that the street we were looking for had both east and west address numbers. Eventually, we parked in front of a coffee shop and used a laptop to log into the cafe's Wi-Fi from the safety of our van. Kim emailed someone and asked them where the fuck we were. The show in Indianapolis took place at a house named Secret Location. Well over 100 people showed up, and the dance party went right out the door. Not much of a secret. As we left Lawrence, Kansas, tornadoes were still appearing up near Chicago, but it wasn't our concern any longer. We were heading south, looking for a DIY venue in Fort Worth, Texas. Holy shit, I said. It exists. We were standing in a liquor store 2 blocks from the venue. Although it was March, the temperature in Fort Worth was already 95 degrees. Check this out, I said to Matt, removing a bottle from a glass case. It's Thunderbird wine. Is that good? Matt asked. No, I said. I don't think it is. I held the wine in my hands as someone might cradle a newborn baby. There's a song about this wine, I said. It's a Townes Van Zandt song, and he warns you not to drink it. The lyrics say that the bottle starts with you doing somersaults and ends with your wife kicking you out of the house. I pulled a second bottle from the fridge and stared at it in awe. You gonna get it? My brother asked. I didn't know it really existed, I said. I brought the bottles close to my face. The alcohol content read 17.5%. I looked at Matt and then touched the wad of cash in my pocket. I now carried over $500 of my brother's money. I returned 1 bottle of Thunderbird to the refrigerator and then made my way up to the register. The venue was hotter inside than out. It was on the top floor of a 2-story building. We carried Matt and Kim's equipment up a thin staircase with multiple holes punched through the drywall on either side of the stairs. The space was fun, graffiti on every surface, furniture that had been clearly found discarded on the street and carried into the venue. But that heat, it must have been 110 degrees in there. I set up the CDs and t-shirts on a table just at the top of the stairs so everyone who entered would see them. Sweat soaked through my clothing. Matt, Kim, and I eventually made our way outside to cool down in the 95-degree heat. After a few minutes, we decided to drink beer in the van with the air conditioner on. "Here goes my mind," I said, unscrewing the cap to the Thunderbird. "Don't drink that whole thing," Kim said. "It's your turn to drive after the show." Thunderbird is the color of olive oil and leaves a similar residue on the inside of your mouth when consumed. It smells like gasoline and tastes twice as terrible. At least the liquid was cold. After one disgusting mouthful, I screwed the cap back on the Thunderbird, slid the bottle under my seat, and asked Matt for a beer. After the show, we loaded our stuff back down the stairs and drove to a motel. We showered and prepared for Austin the next day. South by Southwest is a many-day music festival that envelops the entire city of Austin. Thousands of bands from all over the world flood in. If there's a space where a band can play, whether it be a rooftop or a closet, you will find a band playing there. Music fans and critics crowd the streets, wandering from show to show, and occasionally seeing something they like. The festival is long and chaotic, and very fun if you have all the energy in the world. As a touring musician, South by Southwest is nice because you have an opportunity to catch up with every band you've played with anywhere on the road, but only for a moment, because soon they too will be swept off in the chaos. "I have got to pee so bad," said Matt. We were stuck in endless traffic jams entering Austin, already late for Matt and Kim's first show of the festival. "Piss in a bottle," said Kim. "Every bottle is already full." Matt pointed at the trench that ran below the sliding door inside of the van. An impressive amount of trash and water bottles containing yellow liquid had gathered there. "Dump one out the window," said Kim. Matt shook his head. "I'm not doing that." We pulled into a busy dirt parking lot. People were everywhere, and vehicles were parked willy-nilly. "Stage is over there," I said, pointing at a makeshift platform hovering in the back corner of the lot. "What about a bathroom?" asked Matt. There was a small stucco building to our left with numerous beer banners adorning its wall. A sign hanging from the door read, "Miss B's." There was a line of people extending from this door, stretching across the lot. "I don't know if that line is for beer or for the bathroom," Kim said. "Over there." I pointed at a small cluster of trees and bushes. It was 3:30 in the afternoon, broad daylight, but a number of men stood urinating against this shrubbery. Matt ran over and joined them, in plain view of both the street and the stage. "We're here," said Kim to her friend Reggie. "Sorry we're late." "It's all right," Reggie said. "We're way behind anyway." Reggie ran shows around Brooklyn and was in charge of 4 days of entertainment in this lot. As a result, Miss B's would become home base for most of the Brooklyn bands playing the festival. Kim jumped out of the van and unlocked the deadbolt from the back. "We've already got a full drum kit on stage," said Reggie. "You guys don't need to bring any... Just bring your keyboards, I guess." "Are we up now?" asked Kim. "Now or never." Reggie joined Kim, trying to get Matt's keyboards out from behind some things in the van. "Excuse me," I cut in. "Is there a place to get beer around here?" Reggie pointed at the stucco building with the long line. No, like a 12-pack or something. Well, there's a place that way, but it's probably like a 20-minute walk. Kim successfully removed a keyboard and thrust it in my direction. Fletcher, she said, you're going to skip our set? Once all the necessary equipment was on stage, I left Matt and Kim as they fine-tuned their instruments. I looked at the long line extending from Miss B's. People were exiting with beer that probably cost them $6 a can. I rested my hand against the $500 in my pocket. The time had come to hand it off. Soon I'd be leaving in a different van, heading in a different direction. I'll hold on to it for one more meal, I thought to myself. We'd pass some good-looking taco trucks on the way in. To justify spending my brother's money on dinner, I decided not to use any of it now. I unlocked the cabin of the van, climbed in, and removed my bottle of Thunderbird from under the seat. If the flavor was putrid when served cold, it was nothing compared to this room temperature syrup. I chugged it down in big gulps, trying to get the slimy liquid past my tongue as quickly as possible. The last thing I remember about that day is drinking Sparks in an alley with two guys from Jamaica. The alley faced a small river that ran through the center of Austin and was a beautiful, calming oasis amidst the chaos of the festival. As the sun set and the temperature began to drop, me and the two Jamaicans cheersed our cans of Sparks and commented on the beautiful night that was about to begin. I woke on a couch in an unfamiliar living room with over a dozen sleeping bodies laying on the floor all around me. I had no shirt on, but instead, an empty frying pan lay squarely on my chest. I lifted the frying pan, sat up, and looked at the people surrounding me. Of the 20-plus humans, I didn't recognize a single one. I stepped over bodies on my way to the kitchen. I don't think I need to tell you this, but there had been a party. Empty beer cans and liquor bottles lay everywhere. Someone had burnt what seemed to be a large number of grilled cheese sandwiches and left them piled on the stove. The trash can had been kicked over, its contents strewn about the floor, and no one had bothered to pick it up. I dug through the cabinets looking for a clean cup, but when nothing presented itself, I removed a bowl and filled it with water from the sink. I drank out of this bowl and looked at the room around me. Someone slept with their leg across the pile of overturned trash. The frying pan that I found on my chest when I woke, that had a simple explanation, at least in my mind. In Brooklyn, when I blacked out drinking, I often woke with my sock and underwear drawer dumped on the floor. There'd be Hanes and Fruit of the Loom scattered everywhere, and my now empty wooden drawer would be laying beside me at the head of my bed, in case I needed to vomit. Based on this history, it seemed reasonable to say that the frying pan on my chest served a similar purpose. Another unused vomit receptacle. The real questions now were, where was I? How had I gotten here? And where was my shirt? From where I stood in the kitchen, I could see the layout of most of the house. It was an open floor plan. Only a countertop separated the kitchen where I stood from the sleeping bodies in the living room. There was a closed door along one wall downstairs, and then an open, glorious staircase rising from the center of the room, with thick banisters running up each side. I again stepped over the bodies, crossing the room to the closed door. The handle was locked, so I gave a couple of light knocks, hoping to find my brother and Kim on the other side. When no one answered, I ascended the staircase and spotted two more closed doors on the second floor. "Hello," I said, again knocking lightly. It's Fletcher." No one answered, so I knocked a little harder. "Hello," I said again, then began to turn the handle. "Fletcher, I'm in here," answered a voice that I didn't recognize from behind the door. I cracked the door open and spotted my friend Brett Shirley laying in bed, his leg up in a cast, a girl sleeping by his side. "What's up?" Brett whispered, clearly trying not to wake the girl. "Hey," I said. Then I peered around the room, unsure now what I wanted in this moment. "I'm really hungry," I said. "I don't think I ate last night." "What time is it?" asked Brett. He checked his watch. "We'll go get breakfast in a couple of hours." I was still standing in the doorway. I turned my head for a moment and gazed upon the bodies sleeping on the floor downstairs. "I think I'm just going to walk downtown," I said. With some effort, Brett propped himself up against the headboard. "That's like a couple miles from here," Brett said. I began to shut the door and then opened it again. "Have you seen my shirt?" You left it at the strip club." "Oh," I said, looking at the floor. Women's clothing sat in dirty piles scattered here and there. Brett chuckled to himself and added, "I think you bought like everyone we know a lap dance. People we didn't know. You sent Robert into the VIP room." I was still drunk, not even hungover. I looked at the girl sleeping next to Brett. She had blonde hair with bangs, still perfectly splayed across her forehead, unharmed by her night's rest. "I'll find you later," I said, backing out of the doorway and shutting the door behind me. I didn't know what time it was. I had no watch, and my cell phone was dead. The sun was fully up, and I felt strangely rested, almost energetic. Walking a few miles made sense to me. I descended the staircase and approached a coat rack beside the front door. There was a windbreaker that was too small for me, obviously meant for a girl. I put it on and was able to zip it up with a little effort. I exited the house into the already warm Texas morning. The synthetic windbreaker stuck to my body, and I immediately began to sweat. I walked through a quiet suburban neighborhood for about 5 minutes before I stumbled upon a gas station. I retrieved a bottle of water from a cooler, brought it to the front, and asked the attendant for directions downtown. After giving me a couple of street names, the cashier rang me up and waited for me to pay. I reached into my front pocket and then became frantic, patting my jeans in both the front and the back. I pulled my wallet out, looked inside to find no cash, threw the wallet on the counter in front of the cashier, and then wildly went through my pant pockets again. It must have been quite a sight. "I think I have to use a debit card," I said to the cashier. "We have a $5 minimum," the cashier replied. I stood in front of the cashier for a moment, picked my wallet up from the counter, and then returned the water to the cooler from which I'd found it. "Fuck," I thought to myself. "What the fuck?" It was possible that I'd given my brother his money before going to the strip club, but that seemed pretty unlikely, basically wishful thinking, if it was true that I'd been buying lap dances for all of my friends. I knew my bank account held just over $100 when I left for this trip. I began walking downtown, sweating in the windbreaker and trying to come up with a plan. I needed my bag from my brother's van before I left with Zane. Matt and Kim had not mentioned the money up to this point, and it was quite possible that I could have another interaction with them without the money coming up. If I got my bag and then just avoided them until I left town that night, I could later claim that the handoff had simply slipped my mind, and that I would return their money when we all got back to Brooklyn. Of course, with my $200 a week salary, minus food and rent, saving $500 would be a many-month process. I continued making my way downtown for almost 2 hours, sweating and walking and sweating some more. I didn't know who I would find at Miss B's, but I decided to try there first. The parking lot was quiet at this early hour. Still, a number of vehicles had been left there overnight. I recognized my brother's van right away, parked maybe 15 feet from the pissing bush. I had my own keys to the van, and this seemed like an ideal situation. If Matt and Kim had abandoned the van here before crashing somewhere in town, maybe I could grab my bag and run. No need to interact with them at all. I was inserting my key into the van's door when I heard a voice screaming behind me. "Fletcher!" I turned to find Kim walking towards me at a brisk pace. There was about 40 feet between us, and I watched her approach with a stunned, drunken expression on my face. "Fletcher," Kim said again when she was just in front of me. "Did you spend all our money at a strip club last night?" And, just like that, my plan fell apart. I slept in the van for a while until the heat became unbearable, and then I moved to a park and passed out under a tree for a time. I was carrying my bag with me now, using it as a pillow. I ate a late lunch at a Mexican restaurant where I found a plug socket and charged my phone. When the phone came to life, there were messages from Zane asking me to meet him that night at a hotel just south of downtown. Walking, I could get there in about an hour. "I'll drive you over there," said Brett. I was back at Miss B's with a massive hangover. "Thanks, man," I said. "I feel so fucking terrible." "What time do you have to be there?" Zane said midnight. We're starting with a night drive. Zane had traveled to Austin with a band from Los Angeles. The band had done a short tour on their way to Texas, much like the one I just completed with Matt and Kim. Unlike Matt and Kim, this band flew straight home from Austin, and they left Zane in charge of getting their van and equipment back to California. "Okay," said Brett. "It's 8 o'clock now. We drink a beer here, go see ZZ Top, and then I'll drop you over at Zane's place." Brett was propped up on crutches, his broken leg dangling over the dirt parking lot. "Go see ZZ Top?" I asked. My head throbbed with each beat of my heart. "They're playing a secret show at a warehouse." I took a deep breath, widened my eyes, and peered at the ground in such a way as to show Brett that I didn't have the energy for such an experience. "Fletcher," said Brett definitively. "It's ZZ Top. Have you ever seen ZZ Top?" "You're in Texas. Right now you're in Texas. ZZ Top is playing a show. You're gonna see ZZ Top." We drove 20 minutes out of town. Brett was drunk, driving with his left leg and making a pretty good go of it. The scene outside the warehouse was chaos. The parking lot was full. People were making up parking spots, blocking other people in. We parked on the side of the road about a quarter mile away, and I helped Brett hobble along while cars cruised by, blasting LaGrange. The warehouse had a big hangar door and people were coming and going as they pleased. No security that I was aware of. There were easily 1,000 people inside, just milling about. No band was playing, and I don't remember music of any kind, just the roar of 1,000 people screaming over each other in a giant cement box. "The beer's free," said someone, patting me on the shoulder. I turned to find a person that I recognized, but I didn't know from where. "How's it going, Fletcher?" they continued, their hands still on my back. I'm good," I lied. I lightly kicked one of Brett's crutches and said, "This is my friend Brett." The mystery man raised his beer, but didn't give his name. "The beer's free," he said again, motioning to an enormous table where half a dozen people handed out cans of something that I didn't recognize. "I helped set this thing up," the mystery man went on. "Oh, that's awesome," I said. I never seen ZZ Top. I hear they're incredible." "I've never seen ZZ Top either," said the mystery man. "But, it's just a ZZ Top cover band tonight." I turned to Brett. He was already hobbling towards the free beer. I took Brett's keys, walked a quarter mile to the car, grabbed my bag, then walked a quarter mile back to the warehouse. I bid Brett farewell, then stood in the parking lot and asked strangers if anyone was heading back into town. Occasionally, I mentioned that ZZ Top was not playing. Soon I was laying in the bed of a truck, cruising through the warm night with my bag beneath my head. The truck dropped me on 6th Street, just east of Interstate 35. My route to Zane's Hotel took me straight down 6th, which is the heart of Austin's bar district. They had closed the street to cars, so it was pedestrian only, and masses of music lovers and weekend drinkers flooded the pavement like it was Mardi Gras. At times, they bunched up so densely that you had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Pizza parlors had lines down the block, and live music spilled from every bar on the street, but it was barely audible over the street noise itself. I took a left on Congress and crossed the Colorado River, making my way to the south side. I arrived an hour early, but when I called Zane, I found him already sitting in the van out front of the hotel, waiting for another rider to show up. "Climb in," said Zane, looking at his phone in the front seat. "When Lucas gets here, we'll hit the road." I tossed my bag in one of the 4 rear seats of this 15-passenger van. It was mostly empty. All the band's things were stored in a trailer attached to the rear. I spread out along one of the benches and was just happy to be laying on a cushion inside of a structure with the air conditioner on. My eyes were closed, my mind teetering on the edge of sleep, when my phone began to ring. "Fletcher!" screamed Kim on the other end of the phone, shouting over some loud music. "Fletcher, hello?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm here. What's up?" "Fletcher!" Kim screamed again. By this point, I could already tell that she was drunk. "Hey," she said. "Have you seen your brother? I can't find him." "I don't know," I said. "I'm with Zane. I'm about to leave town. I haven't seen him." "Wait, Fletcher!" screamed Kim. "Have you seen your brother?" "I don't know where he is," I said again. "Where are you?" I could hear some rustling from the other end of the receiver. "I'm going to go someplace quieter," Kim said. There was a pause. The only sound was pulsing music coming from Kim's end of the phone. "Where are you?" I asked again when the music got quieter. "I'm at Miss B's," she said. "I can't find your brother. I've been looking for him everywhere." "I haven't seen him since this morning," I said. Now Zane put his phone down and turned his attention to me. "Where could he be?" asked Kim, her voice sounding more concerned than before. "I've looked everywhere." "I don't know." I sat up in my seat and checked the time. It was 11:15. "Have you checked near the bush? Over at the bush where everyone is pissing?" It was the only place I could think of around Miss B's. "Okay," said Kim. "Hold on, I'll check." I could hear rustling again, the sound of Kim's phone against her ear as she walked. There was a pause, and then, suddenly, Kim broke out laughing, her unmistakable laugh, one that sounds like a squeaky wheel. "He's here," she said, barely able to get the words out through her breathless laughter. "He's sleeping." Her laugh went, "Ee, ee, 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 ee." "He's sleeping in the bush," she said. I hung up the phone and laid back in my seat. "Zane," I said, looking up at the ceiling of the van, "sometimes I think brothers have an incredible connection." Moments later, I was fast asleep. I woke around 4 a.m. Lucas was driving and Zane was laying in the rearmost seat of the van, having a quiet but tense argument with someone. "Where are we?" I asked Lucas, a man I had yet to meet. "Still in Texas," Lucas said, his shaggy red hair silhouetted by the headlights of oncoming traffic. "What did you want me to do?" pleaded Zane from the back seat. "I was working and..." No, I was working then too. After I let you in, I don't have any breaks. All I wanted to do was spend time with you, but I was working." This conversation went on and on. My bag lay on the floor beneath my seat, nestled up against a warm 12-pack of Budweiser that had been in the van when I arrived. I reached into my bag, pulled out a number of dirty t-shirts, and situated them under my head like a pillow. I rolled onto my side, fluffed the t-shirts up a bit, and soon fell back asleep. When I woke again, it was daylight. We were parked at a rest stop. Lucas now sat in the passenger seat, eating a muffin. His window was open, and hot air flooded into the van. Zane was on the street, pacing and screaming into his phone, basically having the same conversation as the night before. "Good morning," I said, sitting up. "Where are we?" "Still in Texas," Lucas said again. "You should use the bathroom if you gotta go. Zane's taking over driving." "Who's Zane talking to?" I asked. "Clara. They've been doing this the whole tour." "That's his girlfriend?" Lucas turned to me. "I thought you guys were friends." I shrugged. "Him and his girlfriend never stop doing this shit," Lucas continued. "It goes on and on and on." I could hear Zane's voice flowing in through the open window. It was a desperate whine. He was pleading. I've always been attracted to polarizing people, loud people, confident people. Zane was all three. We met in college. He was a freshman and I was a sophomore, but I was enamored with his confidence and viewed him somewhere between a peer and a mentor. I invited him to every house party I heard about, every art opening and basement show, and he was eager to come along, one of the few people I've met with the energy to go out every night of the week. Upon arriving at these social events, it was the Zane show. He demanded people start dancing. He required the music to be turned up. And he only wanted the hits. His personality was big, and his hair was even bigger, dyed black and fluffed up into something reminiscent of a peacock. As we cruised from party to party, I would show him pranks that I had learned during my punk years, and he was happy to execute them blatantly. Anything that made a scene. In this, we were quite a pair. Of course, if you're loud and you're confident, you will attract women. Once, we were walking down Newbury Street in Boston when we passed two beautiful women strolling in the other direction. When we turned around for a second look, we found the women peering back at us as well. Without missing a beat, Zane beckoned them to where we stood, demanding to know their plans for that evening. This level of confidence, just enough to start a conversation with a beautiful stranger on the street, it was unimaginable to me at that time. But now, it was 6 years later, and the confident man I knew seemed to be in a very different position. "Sorry, guys," Zane said, climbing into the driver's seat after another 15 minutes on his phone. "Okay, have you two met?" Lucas shrugged, and I nodded. "Well, that should be done for a while." Zane put the van in gear and pulled onto Interstate 10, but not 5 minutes later, Zane was driving with his left hand on the wheel and his phone up to his right ear. Eventually, we reached El Paso, then finally exited the state of Texas. Soon we were cruising through the open desert of New Mexico. There was no stopping for food, just a bathroom break here and a quick filling of the gas tank there. As the gas was being pumped, I looked at truck stop hot dogs and wished I'd kept some of my brother's money instead of spending it all so frivolously. When Zane wasn't talking to Clara on the phone, he was frantically texting with her, never filling us in on what the argument was about. From what I could tell, it was about nothing. Back in Boston, Zane's exploits began to wear me down, and it wasn't that his larger-than-life personality got on my nerves. It was jealousy, plain and simple. I desired his confidence. I longed to be the center of attention when I entered a room. I studied his behavior, but I couldn't wean myself from my shy tendencies. Plus, his hair looked amazing, and mine had just started to fall out. It would be another 6 months before I discovered hair loss pills. Eventually, Zane slept with a girl that I had had a crush on for quite some time, and I couldn't take it. After that, I avoided Zane for the better part of a year. But now he was giving me a ride, over 1,400 miles, and he seemed miserable. "I was talking to her because she's their tour manager," said Zane, a headset plugged into his phone. "I didn't introduce you because I didn't know her name." "Well, yeah, I know it now, but I didn't in that moment." I'd be lying if I said Zane's unhealthy relationship didn't bring me some kind of inappropriate pleasure. A punishment for having a personality that I loved at first and later couldn't compete with. Retribution for jealousy. It was 4 p.m., and we were cruising through the beautiful Rocky Mountainscapes of Arizona. Zane was driving, I sat shotgun, and Lucas slept on one of the benches in the rear of the van. The road was mostly clear, hardly a car driving in either direction. I passed the time flipping through the radio, hoping to stumble on a college station. Zane kept an eye on his phone, occasionally picking it up and sending a text while the van swayed back and forth on the 4-lane road. "Stop," I said, startling Zane mid-text. "Pull over." I pointed to our right. The desert beside the road rose at a 30-degree pitch, eventually morphing into a collection of enormous boulders. The boulders were cluttered here and there, leaning on each other at dangerous angles. "I've never been anywhere like this," I said. Zane crossed the rumble strip and brought the van to a stop at the side of the interstate. I rolled my window down and let the heat barrel in, gazing up at the rocks. Eventually, I opened my door and stepped out into the sand. "Come on," I said, closing the door behind me. Zane sat with his foot on the brake, the van still in drive. He typed furiously into his phone. "Hey," I said, "leave that thing here for a minute. Walk up this hill with me." Zane left the van running so Lucas could continue sleeping with the air conditioner on. I peered around me at the low desert bushes, and soon Zane was standing at my side. "Are there tarantulas here?" I asked. "There might be rattlesnakes," said Zane. "Well, there better not be tarantulas," I went on. We began ascending the sandy hill, swerving around the low brush. But after about 20 feet, our journey was interrupted by a sound that I'd become familiar with: the ringing of Zane's phone. It chirped at us through my still open window. Zane stopped walking, turned around, and stared at the van. I looked from Zane's face to the collection of boulders behind him and back to Zane again. As far as I knew, Zane had yet to sleep on this journey. "Hold on," I said. I raced down the hill, jumping brush and keeping an eye out for tarantulas. When I arrived at the van's door, the phone was still ringing. I opened the door and reached below a still sleeping Lucas. I ripped open the 12-pack of Budweiser, removed 2 warm cans, and began running back up the sandy embankment. There was no shade to be found at 4 p.m. amongst these looming rocks, so we stood in the sun and cracked our cans. We cheersed and quietly looked out over the endless desert. "So how you been?" I asked eventually. "Fine," said Zane. "Love life good?" Zane took a drink from his beer, then held the can in the air so it blocked the sun from his face. "Couldn't be better," he said. Lucas was driving as we crossed between the mountains into the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area. The Beach Boys had been on the stereo for a time after we entered California, but now the radio lay silent. All noise overwhelmed our tired brains. Lucas drove himself home and then relinquished the van to Zane, who volunteered to drop me off at my friend's house. In fact, they were Zane's friends as well. We all met in Boston. "So they don't know you're coming?" asked Zane. "It's a surprise," I said. "Well, if I wasn't so tired, I'd come in with you. I want to see the look on their face." Zane navigated the streets of Los Angeles. The large trailer attached to the back of the van made some turns difficult. "Can we stop somewhere and pick up a case of beer?" I asked. "I don't want to show up empty-handed." "Just take the rest of that Budweiser," said Zane, pointing at the floor behind him. Zane left the van running in front of my destination, and we said our goodbyes. We promised to meet up again during my time in Los Angeles, although we never would. Zane's girlfriend wasn't letting him out of her sight. After Zane pulled away, I approached the unfamiliar house, listening for my friends inside. I knocked on the door, exhausted, holding 10 warm Budweisers in my hand. My bag lay on my feet. I knocked a second time and paused, but no one answered. I set the beer down and looked around. The streets were quiet, suburban. Someone walked a pit bull. I knocked for a third time, and then waited and waited. For the first time on this trip, I felt a creeping fear that maybe no one was around to save me. So ends the 3rd season of listening to Fletcher C. Johnson. A big thank you to anyone who told a friend about the podcast. That is one of the most important things you can do to help me. It's truly just you and me promoting this thing. If you know someone who lives their life like an idiot, or would enjoy listening to stories about me living my life like an idiot, please text them an episode of this podcast, or tell the whole world about it on social media. That's the only chance I got in this crazy system. I want to give a big thank you to Zach Gajewski and my cousin, Will Thunderegg Georgiantis, for editorial help on these stories. Shout out to Zane. My brother listened to this episode and he was like, does Zane know about any of this drama you had? And I realized, fuck no. This is all going to be news to him. But anyway, I sent him an advanced copy of the episode and he dug it. He didn't ask any questions. Maybe he knew the deal. Zane and I could not figure out who was in the van with us. Who the fuck was Lucas? Was it someone who is out there listening now? Please let me know. Justin or Jared? Was it one of you guys? It's a fucking mystery, man. This season, I'm again asking for support from you listeners. I spend months writing and producing each episode of this podcast, but it's not sustainable if I do it for free. I need help from you listeners. I am asking for $5 for this 5-episode season. I want to say thank you so much if you gave me $5 for season 2. That is greatly appreciated. But this is season 3. This is a whole nother son of a bitch. This is another year of my life. And I'm asking you, please, to support again. You can Venmo me directly. My Venmo is at Fletcher C. Johnson. If you can't afford $5, you can give $4. You can give $2. Anything you can give is appreciated. This podcast is cheaper than the cost of buying a beer at a bar. But if you choose to support the podcast with $20 or more, I will send you a gift. I will mail you a book with one short story, one unreleased Fletcher C. Johnson story. And you can see what this podcast looks like on the page, which is, that's how it was originally intended to be. My Venmo is at Fletcher C. Johnson. My PayPal is fletchercjohnson@gmail.com. If you support with $20 or more, please include your email address in a private note with the payment so I can figure out the best way to mail you this little book. South by Southwest. Fuck. It was hard to write about South by because for some reason it is embarrassing. I probably played South by 10 years in a row and I always had a good time, but it's just not cool to talk about it. You'd be on tour in November and you'd be playing with a band in Detroit and they'd ask, you going to South by Southwest this year? And you always got to be like, yeah, we're going, I guess. Like, you're not allowed to be excited about it, Anyway, I tried to capture the feel of what it was really like to be there. Hopefully I did okay. The truth of these stories, the truth varies in many ways from the story that I tell. I'm trying to build a story that is tight, and a lot of stuff that actually happened has to get left out. In this case, I left out one whole day in Austin, because every time I included it, it just ruined the flow of the story. The day of the quote-unquote ZZ Top show, that was actually 2 days after the night at the strip club. But I still felt like shit. Yes, Thunderbird leads to the classic 2-day hangover. But after waking up under that frying pan, I actually had a show to play that night. This was pretty early in my musical career. The first year I ever played under the name Fletcher C. Johnson. and the legendary DIY promoter Todd P., who has helped my brother in infinite ways throughout the years. He was kind enough to put me on a show that he was setting up. It was in someone's backyard just outside of town, right next to an oil change place named the Groovy Lube. Classic Austin shit. This performance was just me singing with an acoustic guitar, and I opened for one of my all-time favorite bands, Bright Black Morning Light. The show was chill. Everyone could lay in the grass in the yard and watch the bands play right in front of them. There was no stage. It was just you and the bands in the yard together. Joints were casually being passed around. Most South by Southwest shows are all about speed. You have 1 million bands playing every show, and each band only has like a 20-minute set, so it's just go, 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 go. It's frantic, and people are doing anything they can to stand out in the chaos, and it can be overwhelming. But the Groovy Lube was the opposite of this. People relaxing, taking a moment to themselves, taking a moment to breathe. When I played, I obviously felt like absolute shit. I rarely remember being more hungover in my life. Matt and Kim were nice enough to come out for my set, even though they were busy, and I just spent all of their money. But anyway, I opened the set by telling the story of the night before, talking about the strip club, my brother's money, and waking up in the strange house. And okay, first I gotta say that the crowd in the yard was your classic weirdo artist DIY types. My people. I love them. But one house over, there was another group of people who decided to watch the show. Just some neighbors. Of course, they were invited to join in our yard, but they decided to stay in their own yard. They had some lawn chairs set up, and they had a case of beer, and they were chilling. These neighbors were a white, working-class family. It's safe to say that at least one of them owned a Harley, and they were watching us through a picket fence while their kids ran around them playing with toys. So, when I was telling the story of the night before, I was talking about the Thunderbird, this magic devil's elixir with the flavor of turpentine and the consistency of melted plastic. And none of the weirdo artist crowd knew what I was talking about. But those neighbors, the second I mentioned the word Thunderbird, they were cheering and laughing, and they loved me. And at one point in the middle of my set, I was between songs talking about how much my head hurt, and one of these neighbors finally crossed from their yard into our yard. And they passed through the crowd, and they walked right up to me in my seat, and they put a fresh can of beer next to me in the grass and told me that if I drank it, I would feel a lot better. Something about this moment made the whole Thunderbird incident seem totally worth it. So, thanks again to Todd P., and sorry again to Matt and Kim, and always remember, what's the word? Thunderbird. How's it sold? Good and cold. What's the jive? Birds alive. What's the price? 30 twice. Okay, guys. Give me another year and a half, and I'll have another season of stories ready for you. Another 5 tales of love and failure. You've been listening to Fletcher C. Johnson. I'm Fletcher C. Johnson. Thanks for listening.